Welcome to the Straight Red Card. We are back. We're just, we're first of all, continue to like and subscribe. Thank you for that. But we're actually doing sort of a special segment here because of all the feedback we're getting about the piece we just put out with Filippo about is the mainstream media, U.S. soccer media, failing us? And then that was pretty much all Filippo. We didn't really have much to say. We just let him run with it. But
a couple snide comments here and there.
Yeah, that's about it. But the thing is, we have our own experiences in this. Some closer than others because of our days at Big Soccer and my days writing soccer articles. So we do have a personal experience. And I think we need to share that because, Brett, we had people who were saying, oh, it's not that bad. Grant Wall said there's really you don't really have to worry about it. Well, Grant said it, then shit, it must be true. No offense to Grant.
Yeah, I mean, other names are brought up too, along with that, with like Tight Shirts meltdown after 2018 failure. Brought up Hercules Gomez, who's talking more out about now, which is great to see.
Yep.
So they bring these pundits up as a counterpoint to our point. And I'm like, that's great that the big dogs, whether they've worked their way up through the system over the course of decades, or they went from players to pundits and have that leverage, can spout off what they think or what they partially think. But then there's a whole plethora of other people working for newsprint, working for TV stations, radio, working for just their own YouTube channels,
websites,
right. Popular blogs.
Right.
I mean, there are a lot of people out there that, if you I personally feel this is my understanding of access media as a whole, looking at across all entertainment. But if you're a smaller person in the pond and you go against the grain, you may not necessarily get the same access that you once had.
And somebody said, well, MLS, it's not about MLS. This has nothing to do with MLS. That's a whole nother different case. We are talking about the United States Soccer Federation. All right. MLS gets a lot more hard questions than the USSF does. Okay. They just not going to get those questions. So I'm not worried about Taylor Twellman throwing a hissy fit and going, what are we doing? And what is that? That's just like outrage or whatever, but there's no specific criticism of a specific person at USSF that Taylor Twellman blamed. And what is Herc? I mean, I know Herc can be critical, but he never crosses the line with an extreme question about, the general competency of the USSF. He just makes kind of like, I have an issue with this. I have an issue with that. He doesn't say these people are incompetent. Doesn't say that. Never gone that far. So, and those guys are with big media outlets. They're not worried. They're not the ones that need to worry. It's, as Brett said, the guys writing the articles, the guys running the websites. And a great example of this was on Sam's show, and I highly recommend this. And I don't say that very often, but I'm highly recommending you go to his YouTube page and watch his interview with Meg Swanick.
Who just for those who aren't familiar with it, Sam is at Yanks Report.
Yeah, go to Yanks Report and watch his interview with Meg Swanick, who traveled with the U.S. men's national team for every game in the last window of qualifiers. And just listen to what she has to say. And I'm going to quote her here, okay? When asked by Sam, is there a certain reluctance? This is not exactly what he said. I'm paraphrasing Sam. Basically, is there a line you can't cross? Is there, when you're asking Greg questions, how hard can you be? And Meg said, and I quote, you have to be aware of where the line is. And I quote, and she writes for, let's see, what she writes for. Crap, I wrote it down and now I can't find it. Last Word on Sports. It's not a huge sports page. Okay. She's got to tippy toe around and she knows it. And she said as much. And I don't know how much more obvious it can be. Okay, so that's just one person you're saying. All right. Well, Brett, I think we can go into some personal experiences here
Well,
too.
before we go into that, though, I went back and watched a couple of the post game interviews and stuff like that, the press releases,
Yeah.
and it's funny because when you start listening to the people asking the questions, a lot of them specify very open-ended questions, and I know that they're just trying to get as much of a quote as possible from Berhalter based on a certain thing, so I don't fault them for asking it. But it's usually like, well, what did you think of your team's first half performance? And then Berhalter would go on like a 2-minute talk about the first half, but it wasn't necessarily saying, "Hey, dude, you guys played like crap. What could you guys do differently next time around?" You know,
or yeah, or like phrase it like that was one of the worst halves I've ever seen, Greg. How did you turn it around in the second?
Yeah,
you're not gonna hear that.
It's just it's, and I'm not saying that they need to say that either. And again, I understand they have to say they say it kind of a very broad sense because they want the most they can get for their minute time there. Their question may be quickly a follow up, but I mean there were times when they were like, you know, what do you how'd the injuries affect you after this is after the Canada game, but how the injuries affect you in this? And like, yeah, it really hurt us not having, players like, Timmy Weah and Morris and Ariel. But, we stepped it up and we did well. And I'm like, and then they went to the next question. I'm like, I would have followed up with saying, well, why wouldn't you have called in somebody else or something along those lines? Not necessarily that bluntly, but you got to keep pushing on that. You just can't necessarily let it sit there like that. And I think somebody eventually brought it up later, which is great to hear, but it's I don't know.
Why were certain players left off? Like Green, who's not playing that great right now, didn't even play today, or De La Torre. Like no one said, why'd you do that? And when Way went down, why didn't you replace Weah? No one asked that either. And I just think that those are the kind of questions that are missing because those are the things that fans notice. Mm-hmm. And they're like, what is he doing? Why did you start Adams at right back, for the game against Honduras in a back 5-3? I mean, it's just,
And I will say us and the fans and other YouTubers and stuff like that have the privilege of just speaking their mind and speaking with a little more vehemently than maybe the pundits get away with, when they're actually talking to players, talking to the coaches and stuff like that. It's a luxury that we have here, not necessarily having to answer to anybody.
We have it because we're not worried about access.
Yeah.
Okay. Meg's worried about her access, and she knows if she says, it really seemed, Greg, at the end of the game that you were having some real conflicts and rifts with certain players. Would you care to elaborate about if there's any issues going on? Well, I memean, that would be a hard-hitting question, but you don't ask that question. You don't do that. No.
And another point to what you're saying there too, and they again in the post game after Canada, there was a question about McKinney and why he wasn't included in the rumors and stuff like that. And, Berhalter shut it down saying, hey, it's a personal matter. He broke the rules. We're not going to go into it. And then, the next 3 or 4 people asked the exact same question. First off, have a list of questions. So if somebody asks your first question, move on to the second question is my take. But,
no kidding.
But it's just like, it's one of those things though, like, it was, I would have been, I mean, I guess if you're going to ask that question again, try to be a little more forceful. I'm like, hey, Greg, I understand it's a personal matter and you guys are handling it in house and stuff like that, but the rumors are going to be spreading. Other medias around the world, Mexico media, are going to have more information on it because they're going to be able to talk to people and get inside information from somebody. Why don't you split it out? I'm not saying we have to have all the inner workings behind it, but say, hey, he broke COVID regulations. He wouldn't even say that. Somebody said, like, hey, it was reported that he broke COVID regulations. Go, well, it's a personal matter and we're dealing with here, And it's just like, give us a little bit of something to go off of. And how long? He's like, we haven't decided yet.
I mean, you're only kicking the guy, and I don't know if the number of days is completely accurate yet. I haven't been able to confirm it, but you're only kicking one of your best players off your team for 2 very important games, and possibly a third game. That being the first game of the next window is what I hear. He'll be banned for that one too. It's a 3-game suspension. let's get some clarity on that too. How long is this? And well, we got from Greg, because no one asked a specific question, was, well, I'm sure he'll be back with us. Okay. Okay. That's pretty general. But listen, folks, yeah, we don't worry about access. We probably worried about it a little more when we were with Big Soccer. And I can give an example, Brett, of what happened. And I think this is really important. I think 6-7 years ago, I believe Preki was the coach of
Chivas USA.
No, yes, and
okay.
yes, thank you. I couldn't remember the name of their stupid team. So Chivas USA, he was the coach of Chivas USA, and he had Kleshin on his team the year before, and Kleshin wanted out of Chivas, and he got out, and of course he went to Europe. I think he went to Anderlecht.
Yep.
And so I had this phone call and this conversation with Sasha's dad, and it was really just going to be about Sasha Kleshin moving to Europe, right? That's all the conversation was going to be. How does he like it? How do you think he's going to do? And the conversation went a totally different direction than I thought it was going to go. Sasha's dad, and I've never told this story before in detail like this because, well, I mean, it's old and dated, but it's relevant and true now. Sasha's dad went on a rant, a like 15-minute rant about how horrible of a person Preki was and what the conflict was between Preki and Sasha. And it got ugly. He called him some things I cannot even say. And I think I probably bleeped out the words when I wrote the article. And so I wrote the article about Sasha moving to Anderlecht, and it ended up being an article trashing Preki from the Kleshin family perspective, just wrecking Preki, giving specific examples of what Preki told Sasha Kleshin when he played. Just nasty little tidbits. But at that time, Preki had lost his job to Chivas, and he had moved on as an assistant coach for US Soccer at the time. So I asked Sasha's dad, I said, are you sure you're okay with me running with this? You're absolutely sure. I asked that several times because some of the things he said was so very, I mean, it was rip roaring stuff. And he said, yes, go ahead. I don't care. Now I learned later, this is because I posted the article up on Big Soccer the next day. It was getting mucho hits. People were reading going, damn, oh shit, snap, word. You know, it was just crazy. And I get a call, and it is Sasha's dad. And Sasha's dad says, and I can't remember his first name, so please excuse me. He says, man, you got to take that article down. I'm like, I thought you were cool with it. He said, well, a couple things. One, I was drinking that night. And two, I'm like, okay, you were drinking. All right. But I asked you several times if you're cool with it. I didn't know you were drinking. How am I supposed to know that? You weren't slurring. And then he said, but I just got a call from US Soccer. And if that article doesn't come down, Sasha will never play for the United States men's national team again. I went, holy fuck, why? He said, because Preki's now an assistant coach, and there's a big clique in US Soccer, and he's part of the clique. And if you fuck him, you fuck the whole beast. And he said, can you please? He begged me to take it down. I went back to the Big Soccer and I took it down. And he also said, by the way, if you don't take it down, you'll never get an interview with anybody close to US Soccer again. And I said, shit, that's pretty heavy threat. He said, I'm just telling you what they told me. Okay, so I took it down. That fucking is a true story. True fucking story. It happened. It happened a long time ago, but it happened. And nothing's changed, folks. US Soccer is the same beast that it's ever been. Ever been.
Word.
Word. I'll say this much as well. As you know, Brad, I was working sort of on the sides, on the edges, with a guy named Stephen Mandis, who just wrote a book about what happened to the United States men's team, the ugly truth about the beautiful game. And I'm happily featured once in that book. But I am featured on the back. I give my review. Anyhow, I don't think Steve would mind me saying this, but it was no secret, and we discussed it at length with one another, how insular and protective U.S. soccer are. Now, occasionally take a big hit from ESPN, the Taylor Twellmans, or the Hercules Gomez's, or the Lawlesses. But guess what? They ain't taking hits from little shits. All right. They don't want that. So they'll cut your ass straight off. And, you know, Steve told me how hard it was to crack this U.S. soccer bubble to get interviews with certain people. You know, it turned out all right. But he said, yeah, I had to gain their trust. They're very protective. That's not exactly what he said, but I'm just kind of summing it up for you. And so it was the first thing we talked about in our first interview. It was so funny. I said, so this book must have been a bitch to write because those people don't like talking. He's like, yeah, it was really tough. It was tough. So again, listen to the interview Meg does, and you can even see how she answers some of the questions and how safe she has to be, how mindful of her words she has to be with Sam on a Yank Report show, which has a lot of subscribers, yes, but, you know, in the scheme of things, it ain't ESPN, and she's worried about that getting out. All right, I think maybe we got that off our chest. Brett, I don't know. Have you?
Yep. I feel 20 pounds lighter.
So, listen, if you want to keep winning, don't fuck with the USSF. That's what they're saying, folks. So be careful out there. It is true. They are insular. They are protective. It's not a joke. It's not my imagination. It's no one's imagination. It's reality. Ask any beat reporter out there covering U.S. soccer. Listen to any interview with Greg Berhalter with the press and how careful everybody is with their words. Trust me, it's real. Okay, so we're going to move on to the next segment. So stick with us. We're going to answer some of your questions. Until the next time on the Straight Red Card, jolly ho.